I never chose to be a burden, but I did, and no one had to remind me. After my parents died in a car accident, I was 24 and the only one left who could take care of it. I put everything on hold, my dream of buying a house, my blossoming relationships, myself, to support my brother Spencer and his wife, Courtney. I paid the mortgage, paid for my grandchildren's education, even secretly helped Spencer pay off the investment debt he hid from the family. I worked tirelessly, lived below my means, telling myself, as long as they were okay, I was okay. But as time went on, the burden grew heavier. And the pain didn't come from the money, but from the silence. They never once asked if I was okay. I kept giving, sacrificing, enduring, until I realized they weren't grateful. They just saw it as an obligation. And me? I gave everything. I had only planned to stop by Spencer's house that day to return the toys Jonah had left in my car the week before. I hadn't called ahead, as is the custom of someone who thinks home is a place where no permission is required. I'd brought along a couple of warm muffins, intending to stay a while, play with the kids, and then leave. As I reached the door, I heard laughter coming from the kitchen, Spencer and Courtney's voices. I was about to enter when I stopped when I heard my name. "It's fine for now," Courtney said. "As long as she feels guilty, we're fine." I stood there, frozen. A cold void had spread across my chest. Spencer chuckled. Emery always felt inadequate. She needed to feel useful. That's why she never cut me off. She. Not your sister. Not the one who got us through the worst years. Just a tool. A walking wallet with my name on it. I don't remember how long I stood there. Every sound after that was a blur, like I was watching an old movie, the clanking of dishes, the soft laughter, the splash of water. Every word they said felt like needles piercing my skin, not because of surprise, but because it confirmed what I had tried to ignore for years. I was unloved, I was used. I backed away, very quietly, leaving the porch like a ghost. The chill of the afternoon seeped into my collar, but I felt nothing. I drove home with no music, no thoughts, just a blank space in my head, dead silent. When I got home, I sat in the car for almost an hour, the muffins still on the passenger seat, untouched. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the budget spreadsheet I had been updating regularly. Every monthly transfer, every living expense for the Spencers, it all stood out like an accusation. I was spending nearly 40% of my income each month to support them. I don't buy a house, I don't travel, I don't invest in myself, because I think family comes first. But have any of them ever put me above anything? I thought back to how many times I'd been called too sensitive for looking tired. How many times Courtney had dismissed my success with a sneer. How many times Spencer had said, "We wouldn't have survived without you," but never, "Thank you." And now, they were telling me I'd never cut it off. That I needed them to feel valuable. I nodded slightly, a cold smile flickering across my face. They were wrong. And I was going to show them. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing as their words kept repeating in my head, beat by beat, word by word. She needs to feel useful. She'll never cut it off. The word "her" cut into me like a dull knife, not sharp enough to kill me, but enough to make me bleed all night. I looked around the small apartment I'd called temporary for 7 years because I hadn't saved enough to buy the house I wanted. On the dining room table, I had a spreadsheet open on my computer, where I had meticulously recorded every expense for Spencer and Courtney. Looking back at those numbers, I no longer felt proud. I had lived as if love was an unquestionable obligation. That if I kept giving, I would eventually be loved back. That if I tried a little harder, sacrificed a little more, they would eventually see me as worthy. But they didn't. They never saw me. They just saw me as an emotional ATM machine, easy to manipulate, easy to keep quiet, easy to take on. I remember the last time Spencer said thank you was in 2019, when I helped him pay off his credit card debt so he wouldn't be sued. Since then, every transfer I've made has been met with silence or a, yeah, I got it. I wasn't asking for accolades. I was asking for a little respect. And I realized I never got it. I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and started writing. Cancel automatic transfers. Stop paying Spencer's electricity, water, and gas bills. Disconnect secondary card account. Change phone number. Block email. I didn't cry. I just felt relieved. As if I had finally cleaned out a dusty room that I'd slept in all my youth. The next day, I went into the bank and signed all the stop payment forms. The bank teller looked at me, tilted his head and asked, "Are you sure? This money has been transferred regularly for over 5 years." I smiled, a smile as determined as ever, "I'm sure." That evening, I opened my phone and saw 10 missed calls from Spencer. A short text message, "The transfer hasn't arrived yet. Is there a problem?" No greeting. No concern. Just a question about money. I didn't answer. Because this was the first time in my life that I had put myself first. And I knew this wasn't revenge. This was an alarm, and I wasn't going to turn it off again. I had expected that, after cutting off all the payments, there would be immediate anger. But no, what came first was confusion. The first text from Spencer was simply, "The transfer hasn't arrived yet. Is there a problem with the bank?" No, "Are you okay?" No, "What happened?" Just the only question they cared about, money. I didn't answer. And as my silence dragged on, confusion quickly turned to panic. Courtney started calling, leaving a string of messages that were a mixture of command and blame. "Emery, what's going on? The kids need money for school. You can't just disappear. You're part of this family." That last sentence made me shudder. Family. Families don't use each other. Families don't call their little sisters emotional wallets. Families don't just call when they need money. I blocked both numbers. Blocked emails. Deleted the secondary bank account I'd used for convenience when they needed to roll over expenses. Each action felt like a release. No more unconditional support, no more "Emery is always there." Relatives began to join in. A distant aunt I'd only met a few times sent a message, "Family is family, no matter what. No one's perfect, you should forgive." Forgive. I never even got an apology. They weren't sorry, they were just panicking because their cash cow was gone. I knew things would get worse before they got better. And they did. Courtney called my office, using the excuse of "my sister is out of touch" to connect me. The receptionist apologized for not being able to transfer. At that moment, I did something I would never have dared to do. I met with the company's legal department, explained the situation clearly, and asked for an update on my personal privacy. I wouldn't let them destroy the only space I had left, my work. I used to think that silence would make me feel guilty. But I quietly realized, it was in the silence that I first heard my own voice. No one saw me scream, no one saw me tear everything apart like in the movies. My break came gently, step by step, beat by beat, but deep enough to not come back. I thought that after the break, the silence would be a wall to protect me. But I underestimated the destructive power of a family with wounded interests. When Spencer and Courtney realized I had indeed withdrawn and was not coming back, they began to mobilize their relatives. Messages from distant cousins who had never asked how I was doing poured in like a shower after a storm. Emery, family is blood. Even if they are wrong, you should not be so heartless. Courtney said you abandoned your family suddenly, causing a crisis. You cannot treat your siblings like that. Each reproach felt like a stab in the shoulder, not because it hurt, but because it was so familiar. All my life, I had been taught that protecting others is a priority, protecting yourself is selfish. Courtney upped her game, from victimhood to intimidation. One evening, I received an anonymous email with a warning. It would be a shame if Emery's company found out you abandoned your parents and your niece. She was trying to use her reputation to force me back, an old psychological trick, but one that would have worked if I had been me a year ago. But this time, I didn't panic. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. At the same time, I texted my best friend, Ava, who had told me, years ago, no one has the right to make you a sacrifice to make their lives easier. Ava didn't beat around the bush. She just sent back a message. If they threaten your reputation, they will have to face their own truth. I started to proactively protect myself, something I had never done before. I kept all the evidence, recorded my transfer history, prepared legal documents if Courtney or Spencer dared to push things further. For the first time, I didn't just back down, I barricaded myself. And in the midst of all the noise, what surprised me most wasn't the betrayal or the threats. It was. I didn't feel guilty. I no longer lie awake at night questioning myself, am I too tough? I no longer have dreams in which I try to explain that I have limits. No, this time I don't have to defend myself. Because my silence isn't an avoidance, it's a statement. That I was enough. That I didn't need forgiveness from people who weren't sorry. And that if the family was what was dragging me down, then I could stand up without it. I knew this day would come. I just didn't expect it to come so soon. A week after I blocked all contact and filed legal documents warning Spencer and Courtney of threatening behavior, I got a text from the bank. Even though I had long since taken the loans off, they were still using the same information to send me a warning. Spencer's house was officially in foreclosure. 3 months past due. No way out. I thought I would feel gloating. But the only emotion I felt was calm. No pain. No gloating. Just relief. I was no longer tied to the role of savior, the responsible. They had to face reality, a reality I had carried for them for too long. Now, without me, everything fell apart as it always did. Courtney sent one last text, perhaps the most honest she had ever written. Please, Emery. Just this once. We're desperate. I put down the phone, stepped out onto the balcony, and took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. The wind blew gently through my hair. No more burdens. No more obligations. Just me, for the first time, not breaking my back carrying someone else's burden. Their house was auctioned off 3 weeks later. I didn't go. I just watched the listing on a real estate site, silently looking at the familiar photo, where I'd helped them fix every door, pay every penny to repaint the roof. Now it was no longer my burden. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't sad. I was just calm. 3 months later, I stood in the middle of my own little apartment, with furniture I'd picked out myself, with my own money. No more blaming voices, no more nagging messages. No more, you have to, you should, you owe. Just me, literally. I realized something important. I didn't lose my family. They lost me. And strangely enough, that's what gave me strength.